Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to England once again for the first time in what feels like a good little while, and we're going to return to a brewery that I've always really quite liked, but I've never managed to get a hold of their beers that regularly actually. But the one we have today is quite a special beer. This is one that they release a new iteration of every year for their anniversary. So for this review then, we are going to go to a little place called Finchampstead, which is out to the west of London in Berkshire. And we're having a look at what must be beer number 6 or 7, if I remember correctly, from Siren Craft Brew. So this particular beer is called the Maiden, and it is a barley wine, an American style barley wine coming in at 11% ABV. They release a new version of this beer every year for their anniversary, and this also happens to be the first beer that they ever released. So the vintage that we have today is 2019, and I'll tell you a little bit about the barrel aging side of that later on in the video. But yeah, really cool that I was able to get a hold of this one. This one appeared here in Sweden through the Tillfälligt sortiment on the 25th of August 2020, and that came along with a couple of other interesting beers, some of which I've reviewed for you already. But yeah, definitely cool to return to Siren again. The last beer I had from these guys was the Shattered Dreams, which was an imperial breakfast stout type thing, and that was really nice. And before that, it had been about 2 years or so since I've tried one of the Siren beers. But one of the ones that's always stuck with me from this brewery is the $10 Shake. That was released just at the time when the New England IPAs were really starting to take off. I think I reviewed that beer back in like 2016 or 2017 maybe, but that was a very nice one, and that's one that will always stick with me when it comes to Siren Craft Brew. I do wish that I could review some of these beers a little bit more regularly, because this is a brewery that I very much enjoy. So yeah, definitely cool to return to these guys. Big shout out to my friends in the English beer tubing scene. There's some great beer tubers over there who will review these kind of beers a little bit more regular than me. Craig at Kent Beer Reviews, Harry Bluenose Beer Reviews, Dean at Dean's Beer Reviews, Rob Hopsine, Jake O Beer, there's Ollie at Pint Sized, there's Greg at Bullman's Beer Reviews. We also have Krzysztof at Ale Degustations, and then we have Peter, the Clueless Drinker, as well. There's lots of really nice beer tubers over there in England these days, so do go and show these guys some love. They've got some really nice channels, and as I say, they will review these beers a little bit more regular than me. Brett over at Beardy Beer Reviews as well is doing some interesting stuff, and of course you've got Ginge, Real Ale Trail, Stuart Picard, some very nice guys in the English craft beer scene. So yeah, this one should be really interesting. So as I always do, I'll take you through a little bit of a history of the brewery before we start tasting the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Siren Craft Brew before, and you will definitely see more from these guys in the near future. I am going to try and make an effort to make sure I get some of these beers regularly. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the English beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Siren Craft Brew then, on to my brewery notes. So Siren Craft Brew was officially founded back in 2012 by Darren Amley, and as I mentioned to you earlier, they're based in Finchampstead in Berkshire, out to the west of London in the south of England. So he had previously been working in the tech industry, but on the side he was an avid home brewer, and many of the recipes that were first released from Siren Craft Brew were ones that he had worked on in his early days of home brewing. The initial beers were actually completed in 2010, but they were only bottled and released in 2013, and the first beer that they released commercially was the original version of this, the Maiden barley wine. So the brewery is named after the Sirens in Greek mythology, who were women or winged creatures, and their singing apparently used to lure the wary sailors onto the rocks and, you know, wreck the boats basically. But these beers that are named after the Sirens those are now the core range, and they've got various other things that they've released since then. But since foundation, these guys have been growing very steadily and increasing their range and brewing capacity and stuff. In 2014 they had to add a new bottling line, and then more recently they've converted to cans, I believe, you know, the special beers like this one. I think some of the core range are actually still released in bottles as well. You will still find bottles quite easily, or quite regularly I should say, from Siren, but I think it's the more kind of special and high alcohol brews that are released in bottles. But in the early days, Darren hired American brewer Ryan Whitter Merrithew, and he's now back in the US though as of 2016, and then he had another American brewer, Kyle Larson, who was in charge of brewing until 2019. I'm not sure actually who is the current head brewer at Siren Craft Brew. It didn't say anything on the website actually, but as of August 2020, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys are producing in the region of 20,000 hectolitres of beer per year, and they've produced over 300 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. These days they've also got the tap yard bar right next to the brewery, and this has been open since December 2017. So hopefully when I make it to London, or when I either go to sort of the Bristol area to visit Harry, or you know, to visit Craig over in Kent, maybe we can sort of arrange a wee trip over to Siren Craft Brew. That would be quite a nice thing to do. It'd be nice to do a little bit of kind of out and about filming there, and if we could get Darren on for a Meet the Brewery segment, that would be really, really nice as well. So yeah, we'll need to see about that. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Siren Craft Brew for the moment. These guys are a very kind of small village English brewery. I've always had a bit of a connection in my mind between these guys and Buxton Brewery. They're also from a very, very small village in Derbyshire, which, if I remember rightly, is a bit kind of north. I always forget exactly where the English counties are, but I'm sure, yeah, Derby's quite a bit north actually of Berkshire. But yeah, I've always had that connection. You know, Siren and Buxton are probably two of the more prominent kind of village English breweries, if you like, at least in my mind. The English guys probably would disagree with that actually, but yeah, that's just how the connection has been made for me. But yeah, very, very good brewery, these guys, in my opinion. I've had some really nice beers from them over the years. They've collaborated with the likes of Omnipoil over here in Sweden. And as I say, when you have beers like the $10 Shake's the one that's always stuck with me. The Shattered Dreams Imperial Stout that I had was also very nice. I do just need to make sure I get a few more beers from these guys, because I've always liked this brewery, but I've never been able to get a hold of their stuff regularly, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. If you want to learn more about the brewery, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's have a little look at this one then and see how we get on. I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork before we open this one up. You can see the bottle is sweating because of the lovely, very warm Scandinavian summer that we're having. So yeah, this one is the 2019 vintage of Maiden, as you can see. It comes in at 11% ABV, and it is an American style barley wine. So yeah, it says on the back here, Maiden 2019 barrel aged barley wine blend. Maiden is our anniversary celebration, a blend of barley wine aged in a multitude of barrels sourced from the finest wine and spirit producers worldwide. Each year's vintage is unique, so visit our website to learn more about the beer in the bottle. And I did that before making the video. So the blend of this one, it says this one is, they've made, obviously they'll make quite a few batches of this and then stick it in the barrels and stuff like that, but this one apparently is a blend, 30% red wine barrels, 30% bourbon, 12% whiskey, Auchentoshan in this case, 10% Armagnac, how do you say, Armagnac brandy, 6% Bagnols, which is a French type of wine, 6% Saltonus, which again is another French type of wine, and this one, and then 6%, the final 6%, is a fresh batch of the 2020 Maiden actually. So yeah, this one should be pretty interesting. I'm really, really curious about this. So yeah, this is kind of interesting. I'm curious to see what this has in store for us. But as you can see, this one's got a lovely kind of gold wax top on it, and they've obviously spent a bit of time doing that. From what I know now, for any brewery that does waxing, this is a very time intensive thing to do. I know Nerd Brewing here in Sweden they do, and all of it's done by hand. Pohjola, over in Estonia as well, they do their waxing by hand, and you've seen how widely available their beers are. But yeah, let's get this guy out then, and we will get on with the tasting. I'm really curious to see what this beer has in store for us. Let me just see if we can get under this one. I think this is going to be a bit of a pain to open. We might have to actually stop the video so that I can figure out how to open this guy, so we'll see. Right guys, with the power of a knife we have managed to get this open. I just took the knife round, cut the little bit underneath, and yeah, that thing is bloody thick. Never had that happen on a review before. I need to remember that. I might need to just get a knife and keep that closer for some of the reviews. But yeah, this was an absolute bastard to get open. But yeah, without further ado then, let's get this guy out and into the glass. This one should be really, really nice actually. I've heard very, very good things about this from the English beer tubers. They've probably, I don't know if they've tried the 2019 iteration, but yeah, this should be pretty damn nice. So yeah, as you can see with this one, it is, I think this is going to be an absolute monster. So yeah, 11% American style barley wine, aged in all these different barrels actually. This should be pretty damn good. So yeah, I'm curious to see what this has in store for us. I still can't believe how difficult it was to get that thing off. So yeah, we need to edit this video together unfortunately. But yeah, as you can see with this one, this is poured a lovely, I'd describe this as a very dark, rich kind of mahogany colour there. You could see that the beer poured with a good third finger of a frothy, I would say very light, fawn coloured head. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of that head there. The head incidentally has just faded away to be a very, very kind of thin, foamy layer actually. But yeah, this one looks kind of how you would expect for a barley wine. You will find barley wines that are dark like this. This one I think has an especially long boil. I mean, just you know, look at that. The thing that always affects the colour of your beers is the length of the boil and the amount of caramelisation of the sugars you get. So that's always the length of the boil that usually does that, along with the you know, the types of individual malts and things like that. But this one, you can smell when this one opens up, you get a hell of a lot of caramelised, very dark, treacly brown sugar coming out of the beer. So this is a very, very long boil barley wine. Some breweries can you know, do the boil for about 5-6 hours and things, and I suspect in this case that is probably what's happened. It's probably been a very, very long boil, this one. Incidentally, I never told you the cost of this beer. I paid 115 Swedish crowns for this one, which is probably in the region of, you know, about £9.50, something like that. So actually, you know, maybe a little bit cheaper than the English guys would pay for this beer. So yeah, this one I paid 115 Swedish crowns for. So that's probably about €11.50, something like that, $11.50. And for a treat beer, one that I've always kind of wanted to try for quite a while, I think it's pretty decent. That's one of the great things about Systembolaget. As I say, the 25th of August 2020 was when we got this particular beer. But yeah, let's have a closer look at the aroma of this one and see how we got on. There's nothing overly surprising about this beer when you consider that it's an American style barley wine. So let's look at this. Oh, I'll tell you something, that smells beautiful, I have to say. Straight away with this one, you get that lovely big woody infusion out of it. You can smell the oak in there straight away. You know, you do get little bits of I think it's the brandy and the whiskey and bourbon that really just kind of combine together and give you, you know, give you that big kind of, I always say, you know, Werther's originally type note. You get with the barrel aging, you get these lovely kind of infused aromas out of it, and straight away you can detect that straight away with this one. So yeah, lovely big smooth oaky notes underneath this one. But it does smell a little bit kind of like leathery almost. It's a bit kind of leathery and almost slightly spicy. So yeah, you can pick up the you can really pick up the kind of whiskey notes out of this one, the Scotch whiskey, the slightly stronger Scotch whiskey. You can pick out the American, the kind of smoother and slightly sweeter American bourbon. I've always found that bourbon is just that little bit more sweeter and brown sugary than Scotch whiskey. At least Scotch whiskey's brown sugars are a bit darker, I think. But yeah, the brandy comes out nicely as well. You can, in fairness, you can smell a little bit of the kind of sharpness, if you like, that you would normally get from the wine barrels as well. And as I say, there's 3 different types of wine barrels in this one. 2 from very specific regions in France, and then just general kind of red wine barrels. it didn't say exactly what kind of red wine barrels they were, but the woodiness in this, you can actually, if you pay attention just to the woodiness in the beer, you really can detect all of those different elements of it. It's a very, very complex beer in terms of that kind of barrel aged element to it. I really, really like that. So yeah, as I say, you can pick out the slightly sweeter bourbon notes. You also get the kind of slightly darker, kind of more, the brown sugar in Scotch whisky is always just a little bit darker, to be honest with you. You can detect that as well. The brandy, I think, the brandy gives you a nice kind of almost muskiness to the aroma, if you like. Brandy's quite an interesting one, basically French whisky, from what I remember. Brandy's a really interesting spirit, actually. I don't know all that much about it, but I know that I've had it once or twice and I thought it was really interesting. But yeah, then the wine barrels give it just a little bit of a kind of sweet, kind of fruity edge on the barrel aging as well. So yeah, the woody side of this beer has a hell of a lot of complexity just in itself. It's almost in the same way I've said this about coffee stouts and things as well. Coffee stouts, the coffee bean, the individual coffee bean, can add a hell of a lot of complexity to a beer just on its own, but it's quite unusual with a barrel aged beer to have such complexity just in the woody elements of the beer too. But they very, very much form the backbone of the beer, and everything else you smell from the actual brew recipe and brew sheet and things like that, it kind of sits on top of that whole woody base that I've just tried to describe to you. I feel that I haven't done an adequate job of describing everything that you get out of this one, but the woodiness does almost have just a slight kind of charriness to it as well, and that's quite common, of course, because barrels, before they age stuff in them, they have to char the insides of them, from what I understand. But yeah, so we've covered the woody side of the beer, which is a big component of it. That's the whole backbone of the beer. But yeah, on the malty side of things, then there's a hell of a lot of brown sugar in this one. That's what you'd expect from a barley wine. So the brown sugars in this, very caramelised, really treacly, actually. Treacly, or molasses as the Americans would call them, and that just kind of sits on top of the woody character that this beer has. You do get elements of sweeter caramels coming out of the aroma as well. You can get a little bit of a slightly kind of very bright biscuity, McVitie's Digestive sort of thing. There are elements of that Werther's Originally type kind of flavour out of this one. There's one or two wee vanilla elements in here as well, which is probably to do with the amount of wood and things we have in here, the different kind of barrel aged elements. So to me, you do get a little bit of a vanilla quality out of this one. There's a few nutty elements to it as well, like hazelnuts, walnuts. You've got a very nice kind of nutty sweetness, and that mixes in with that vanilla edge that the beer has, actually, because you really smell the sweetness of this. So the brown sugars kind of dominate the sweetness, but then you've got the vanilla, you've got the nutty side of things. And yeah, that whole aroma goes together really nicely, actually. I love how this one just kind of puts everything together. So yeah, the big, this one, it smells like a big oily beast of a barley wine, and that's the brown sugars that I've kind of described to you as well. And then you've got these other little elements just kind of coming out of it also. So yeah, very thick, oily smelling American barley wine in my mind, this one. It's interesting because I would wonder, if I was smelling this, I think I would probably guess this might be more English barley wine, to be honest with you, because of the big woody elements to it. It almost has a little bit of a kind of toastiness to the brown sugar at the same time. So it's a really interesting one. It's one of the heavier. It really smells like a very big, heavy American barley wine. I think it's probably one of the heaviest ones I've come across, going by the impression I have from the aroma so far. But yeah, the hoppy and fruity side of things, then that's what we've not really talked about yet. And I mean, when this beer has been aged for, I think, about a year in the barrels and stuff like that, you are going to get most of the hoppy elements dropping out of it. But you do get a little touch of earthiness in my mind. There is a wee bit of floral character remaining there. I'm probably drinking this beer fairly fresh compared to how some other people might drink it. So bear in mind that those the esters and stuff from the hops will gradually sort of drop out of this beer. But yeah, the fruity side of this one, I think, is quite interesting as well. There are wee elements of grassiness, like I said, a little bit of floral character, but on the fruity side of things there's a hell of a lot going on as well. So for me you do get some lovely, you can pick up a little bit of kind of sharper fruity quality out of this one. There's some nice dark cherries in there, there's plums, and there's a bit of a kind of lighter figgy raisiny element to the beer as well. You've got all of these lovely, very, very dark red fruits, and perhaps the further you go into the aroma with this one, you do get a little bit of a kind of blackcurranty, blackberry aroma coming out of it. The fruits are very, very nice, and they do get juicier the more you smell of this beer as well. I don't know what hop they would have used in this. There's a few options. I mean, that they could have used Bramling's Cross, the classic English hop, you know, Northern Brewer from Germany, which is commonly used in Doppelbock. It would do the job. Williamette from the States has got a really nice berry-ish element to it. You also have Eureka is an interesting one that will give you like blackcurrants and blackberries as well. Simcoe, depending on what you mix it with, can give you very interesting red fruity characters as well. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly what hop they would have used in this one. It would be interesting to know that, but that information wasn't available on the website. But yeah, take a bit of time and enjoy the aroma of this one. This is definitely one of the more complex aromas that I've come across, particularly when it comes to barrel aged beers. But yeah, let's have a go with this one then and see how we go on. I'm very excited for this beer. So this one is the Maiden 2019 vintage from Siren Craft Brew in Finchampstead in Berkshire, to the west of London. So yeah, this is one that I really recommend you try, a brewery that I really recommend you try if you get the chance. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. Let's get stuck in. Camera control going a little bit crazy there. So yeah, let me just, there we go. So yeah, let's get stuck into this beer then. Sláinte, skål, the Maiden Barley Wine 2019 vintage. Cheers. That's a beautiful, beautiful beer. I will say straight away with this one, you know, this is just really, really nicely done. You know, when you know this brewery, you would come to expect this from these guys. This is a lovely, lovely, big, oily, just beast of a beer. I really, really like this one. Massive thumbs up to Siren Craft Brew for what they've pulled off here. I think this is a really, really nice, really, really nice take on the barley wine style. It really is very, very well done. So yeah, this one you'll notice straight away with this lovely big brown sugary elements. That just dominates there. When you go further into the aftertaste, you get you really get that big kind of oiliness there, and the woodiness really comes out a little bit later. Almost first impression of it as well is that it feels just a little touch kind of charred and things too. You can really get a bit of that charry woody quality coming out of this beer as well. But yeah, this is really, really nice, this one. The English guys were telling me that I was in for a treat with this beer, and they were certainly right there, I have to say. So yeah, first impression of it is a lovely big, just oily and toasty woody beast actually. So big thumbs up to Siren Craft Brew for this one. I have to say, I think this beer is pretty damn awesome. So yeah, let's try and break down the flavour of this one then. So straight away with this beer, you're going to get that lovely kind of smoothness from the wood, just blanket in the middle of your palate there. You can feel that it does have a bit of a kind of charred edge to it. You will feel this beer get drier and drier. The woody elements get drier and drier the further that you go into the aftertaste with it. But yeah, it's beautifully done. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Yeah, this one really is very, very nice. Where to start? You know, where to start then? We've got the whole backbone of the beer with the woodiness as well. You can feel it develop. You know, you get the brown in the middle of the palate, in the middle third of your tongue. You can feel the kind of the brandy element coming out of it. You can really feel that. You can also feel the kind of Scotch whiskey, and then in the very, very centre of the palate, the woody. We're just talking about the woodiness. We're not talking about anything else coming on top of it yet. You do start to get the kind of slightly sweeter American bourbon notes coming out of it. As you go towards the back third of your tongue, you can feel the woody elements are just a little bit more charred and almost, it's not quite spicy, but yeah, quite charred actually, and slightly drier on the back third of your tongue there. But yeah, if you move further forward on the woody elements as well, if you go to the front corners of your palate, then diagonally back, you'll get a few of the kind of vanilla elements. And if you go to the very centre of your palate, then just move forward, you'll get a wee bit of the kind of walnutty, hazelnutty kind of flavours that are, you know, that we were picking up in the aroma, I should say. Brain fart there. But yeah, the way that all this woodiness goes together and all the complexities just in the barrel aging side of things is quite nice. You'll also notice the further you go into the aftertaste with this one, you do develop, you do kind of detect on this one towards the front corners of the palate, you will get just a little bit of the grapey notes coming out from the wine barrel aged side of things with this. And we've just talked about the woody elements of the beer now. We've not talked about any of the malts and stuff that are in on top of this. That's just stuff that you can pick up from the woody side of the beer. It's all the kind of things that come out from the woody edge of the beer just in the aftertaste. But you will notice as well that the whole middle of your palate dries out a little bit and just becomes a little touch more charred actually, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, I really like how this one goes together. So yeah, let's focus on the actual malty kind of side of the beer, if you like. So yeah, on top of that that whole woody thing that we've just described there, you've got an almost kind of big island that sits, it's kind of a big ball that sits on the middle of your palate there, and it's just this lovely big mass of thick brown sugar there. So it's very treacly and molasses-like. It's got a lovely kind of dark brown sugar quality to it. And that forms the backbone. But if you go to in the very centre of your palate, you've got a lovely bit of sweet caramel there, and as you gradually move out from the centre of your palate there, it does become gradually more kind of Werther's originally, almost a little touch butterscotchy if you like, but the sort of treacly backbone there is sitting underneath that. So yeah, you've got the woodiness, the kind of treacly notes, and then you've got the sweeter brown sugars on top of it in the centre, sweet caramel, then a bit more Werther's originally, and then towards the edge of that kind of sort of blob in the middle of your palate, you've got the kind of biscuity, it's sort of a McVitie's digestive biscuity kind of sweetness there. It does get a wee touch grainy actually the further you go into the aftertaste with this one, but not too much. The whole vibe of the beer is very much kind of oily, and then of course you've got that whole complexity of woodiness that comes out of this beer underneath that. That's the highlight of the beer, the whole complexity that the barrel aging gives you. The thing you always get with barrel aged beers as well is that they feel a little bit thinner in terms of their mouthfeels, because you know, it's the aging, I don't know what it is that it does, but yeah, you get all these infused flavours at the expense of some of the mouthfeel. But this is definitely one of the thickest barrel aged beers that I've come across, I have to say, definitely. But yeah, it's lovely. That's the malty side, and the woody side of this beer absolutely covered in my mind. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, onto the hoppy side of the beer, in the back corners of the palate you do get a little touch of earthiness out of this one. Most of the hops, of course, have kind of dropped out of this beer, the green side of the hops at least, but yeah, there is a little touch of earthiness lingering in this one there. As you move further forward along the sides of the palate, it does have a little bit of a herbal note to it. On the front corners of the tongue you can get a teeny tiny little bit of a floral aromatic note out of it. Then round the very front curve of the palate, for me, it's just a little bit lighter and more grassy in my mind. You do get just a little grassy edge to this one, and then on the front third of the tongue, as I always say, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters push their way out of the beer, and the fruits in this one are very oily, but also very nice actually. So for me, if you go towards the back of that front third of your tongue, there's a really nice how do you say, it really has a very nice kind of slightly darker note to it. There's a few kind of dark kind of cherries in there. In that border between the kind of middle third of your tongue and the front third of your tongue, it's almost a bit like a very kind of dark toasted edge of a cake. You do get a little element of a cakey note out of this beer that develops the further you go into the flavour as well. But yeah, in front of that kind of slightly cakey part of the tongue, you've got some really nice dark kind of cherry notes out of the beer. Then you've got a little bit then you've got a wee bit of a kind of juicy raisiny note in there. It does get a little bit sharp actually, but then the rest of the beer is very kind of juicy. So yeah, you've got you do have a kind of darker kind of cherry element to it. You've got some lovely big juicy dark plums in there, figs, and you can feel the flavour just develop, and it kind of changes between fruits as you move further forward, and as you reach the very kind of tip of the tongue, that's when you start to get some of the kind of more sharp raisiny elements. And as you go further and further into the aftertaste with this beer, it gets a little bit more kind of blackcurranty and blackberry-ish, and it really feels quite sweet and juicy. the further you go into the aftertaste with this beer. So yeah, it gets a big thumbs up from me, this one. I think I've described the flavour profile as best I can in this one, but I think I can't really do this beer justice because there are, you know, really high levels of complexity to this one. There's almost a kind of vibe of like sultanas out of this beer as well. There is a wee bit of that kind of dried sultana type quality that comes out of this beer as well, the further that you go into the aftertaste. So yeah, this is one of these beers that I have that is that complex. I feel that I can't really do it proper justice on one of these tasting videos, but I will tell you, it is absolutely beautiful. So, you know, massive thumbs up to Siren Craft Brew for this. They've pulled off a beautiful, beautiful beer here, and a lot of the complexity I think is from the kind of barrel aged side of things, but you get a lot of complexity even in the fruits and even in the kind of brown sugary side of the malt base as well. I think the malt base is pretty straightforward in that sense, you know, treacle and lots of different kind of brown sugary elements to it. I don't find that this one has a kind of bready element to it or anything really, but yeah, to sum it up, the woody backbone forms the basis of the beer. On top of that, you've got a kind of big blob of brown sugar sitting there. You get a little few hoppy elements around the edge of the palate, and then on the front third of your tongue, you've got a bit of the kind of, you've got lots of kind of complexity from the fruits, and in between the kind of front third of your palate and the middle third of your palate, you've got a wee kind of cakey, toasty, you know, kind of toasted cakey edge to the beer as well, which is really nice. In terms of the mouthfeel then, most definitely a full-bodied beer. The carbonation in this one is very, very smooth. This is one of the most oily beers I can think of that I've tried. For a barrel-aged beer as well, you know, that usually thins the mouthfeel slightly, I find, but this one is still, you know, extremely, extremely thick in my mind, so there's no doubt in my mind about this one being a full-bodied beer. In terms of IBUs and stuff, I really don't know about this one. I mean, it's very, very sweet rather than anything else. This is a very, very, very sweet example of a barley wine, and very, very smooth actually. So in terms of IBUs, this one I would think would be very low, like 20 IBUs or something, if that. Yeah, I think you'd be lucky to get even 20 IBUs out of that. It's a very, very sweet beer rather than anything else. So yeah, not a lot to report on the kind of hoppy bitterness side of things. It's very, very smooth in that regard. But yeah, woody backbone, and the malt base in this one very, very sweet, very big and oily, little touch charred as well. They do get a little bit drier the further you go into the aftertaste with this beer, but the fruity side of things, it's got a nice little bit of sharpness to it, but very, very oily. It develops a very oily kind of taste to it, and it gets a wee bit of sharpness, as I say, just as the further you go into the aftertaste, and a little bit more juicy as well, I think, the further you go into that aftertaste as well. But yeah, I think to sum this beer up, another beautiful, beautiful beer. Having tried a couple of beers from Siren before, you know, I'm not surprised. These guys are a very, very capable brewery in my mind, but I think this beer is just a little bit special. So I will need to see what other kind of high alcohol barrel aged stuff they have, because this one is pretty damn good. But yeah, you can see if it's their anniversary beer, it is going to be something pretty damn special actually. But yeah, this was awesome to finally get around to reviewing a version of the Maiden barley wine, because this is a beer I've heard a hell of a lot about actually. So yeah, massive thumbs up to Siren Craft Brew for this one. As I said earlier, a big shout out to my friends in the English beer tube, and seen some very, very nice beer tubers over there. They told me I was in for a treat with this one, and they certainly didn't lie in this case. This was a really, really nice beer to review. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one then. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite vintage of Siren Craft Brew has been as well. That would be interesting. Let me know what your favourite vintage of the Siren Maiden has been as well. Yeah, very good sound that. I like the, you know, I like Iron Maiden, Siren Maiden. I like the name of that. Wonder if that's intentional. But yeah, let me know what your favourite vintage of the Siren Maiden has been. I've really, really enjoyed this one. My first take on it, of course, and maybe I'll keep an eye out for the one coming out next year in 2021. We'll probably get the 2020 vintage over here next year, I would think. But beautiful, beautiful beer. I will make the effort to review a few more Siren beers for you regularly on the channel, because I really, really like this brewery, but unfortunately I've just never had a regular source of them. But yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Siren Craft Brew as well. Do give me some other English brewery recommendations that I can look into, and yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one, it was the 2019 vintage of the Siren Maiden, an 11% American style barley wine, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful beer, this one. I really don't feel I've done this one justice in this review, so try it for yourself and just enjoy it. This is an absolute monster. Thumbs up, guys. So thank you again for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon. Check out my social media, check out Siren Craft Brew from Finchampstead in Berkshire in England, and I'll catch you guys very soon. We will return to this brewery in the very near future. Slàinte, skål, cheers.